It was what I expected overall. I'm satisfied that the 911 operator and the two responding officers were the ones really held accountable. The one thing that I still find a little disturbing is that not taking any fingerprints is still justified. They said there wasn't any surfaces to take prints off of. Like, what about the button on the stereo? What about ceramic and glass doorknobs and metal doorknobs? I mean, I'm not a forensics person, but I really feel like that was a lost chance to get evidence. Other than that, I'm satisfied with the report. I think it was well done, and I think it was thorough. One frustrating thing is I didn't receive it until 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, and I had to get a lawyer to intervene on my behalf. It's supposed to take 60 days. They can extend it to 120, but that deadline passed a long time ago. And somehow it just didn't wind up in my hands until a lawyer intervened for me. When my 3 friends and I initially filed complaints, so many people told us, don't bother. Like, you're wasting your time, you're just gonna, you might even bring the wrath of the NOPD down on you, that kind of thing. And that was usually from people who had lived here their entire lives. They're so cynical and so, hopeless about it. But the PIB report, my complaints were sustained. And I want people to realize that the NOPD, they can be held accountable. Another thing I want people to realize is that because of the consent decree, the Department of Justice is here. They will be here for probably a decade. And I did go to them and speak for 4 hours to them one day, just to make sure that, just in case the PIB investigation slacked off, that there was somebody else who knew what was going on. So the consent decree matters. That's another thing. People are really cynical about that. But it does matter, and it does work. It's worked in other cities, so there's no reason why it can't help here. I'm not scared, but, and I've met some really excellent officers over the course of the past few months dealing with all this. In the initial interview, I said I'd never call 911 again. I still feel that way, but I would call the cops that I know. I have their cell phone numbers, and they are, they would go above and beyond the call of duty. And so I have faith that the department can get better. I have faith that it's on that path, especially because of the consent decree. But, if I called 911, would I trust the person who showed up? That's not going to happen, because I still just wouldn't. I just don't think about it, which people seem to find hard to believe. I kind of set up a tripwire in my head, and if I think about it for some reason, it goes off, and I just change the station. It was initially really hard to go back to my friend's house the first time I went back. It was pretty miserable, but then someone told me, look, you don't have to be afraid of that house, just don't. And so I've gone back since, and it just doesn't matter anymore. And the reason I was there that day was to help paint the house, and so we're going to finish painting the house sometimes this fall, so that'll be the end to that story in my mind. I never was concerned with his returning, and the Department of Justice criminologist agreed. They said that I was the last person, and that was the last house that guy would ever want to see again, because that kind of psychopath, if you disturb their pattern or ruin their plan, then it's just an embarrassment to them. So I was never worried about that. And for some reason, I always thought that he was just gone. And after his, a likeness appeared in the paper, he would have had to have been crazy to stay around here. Obviously he is crazy, but that's another thing I just don't think about.